Greetings everyone. So I have said on this channel before that I have a lot of sympathy for Milo Yiannopoulos. One, I think because I know he's had a rough upbringing and had some things happen to him that were very traumatic, and this may well have led up, in fact it probably did lead up to some of the lifestyle choices that he made. And two, because I feel that no matter what he's done in his life, and of course he isn't perfect and he's a flawed human being like I am, like you are, he's never tried to justify any of the things that he's done that were contrary to church teaching. So while he may have struggled with certain things himself, he hasn't tried to claim that actually it's okay or that the church is wrong on this or that issue. He simply said straight up that yes, he knows that what he's doing or what he's done is wrong, but it's something that he has difficulty with, and I respect that a lot. So I think if people try to claim hypocrisy against him when he says that a certain thing is wrong but then does it himself, I don't think it's hypocritical to do that if you're not judging someone else. I think it's completely okay to say something is wrong. What might be hypocritical is if you point at someone and say they're wrong and they're a sinner, and then you do that thing yourself. That would then be hypocrisy. But even if you don't do that thing yourself, you still shouldn't be pointing at people and calling them sinners and basically judging them, because scripture tells us that's not what we are to do. But the following clip I want to show you is from when Milo still lived in the UK. But for some people, maybe from the US, they might not realize that Milo Yiannopoulos was appearing on television on various programs in the UK before he became quite famous in the USA and started doing all kinds of college campus talks, etc. He was appearing on television, on the BBC, on Channel 4, etc. And here he is on the BBC on a program I believe called The Sunday Show, where they discuss various spiritual and moral issues. And in this particular discussion, the topic of conversation is assisted dying, that, as you may know, there was a vote in favour of, unfortunately, in the UK some months ago. But this discussion is obviously taking place when it wasn't legal in the UK. Now it is, under certain conditions, but it still is legal now. And Milo, of course, takes the Catholic position, as you would expect from a Catholic. I think at the time he was actually a writer for the Catholic Herald as well. And so he gives his opinion, and then the presenter sort of rebuts him, but I think he then gives the perfect response. So take a look.
The problem with the discussion that we're having is we're treating human beings as means. We're talking about, the quality of life thing is distressing to me, because even aside from the religious dimensions and the sanctity of life and the sort of God-given life, human beings, have intrinsic moral worth, and they are valuable objects in themselves. Our moral and spiritual life, shows us as beings that have worth in and of ourselves.
But do you have a right to tell somebody else that they're valuable if they feel that all value in their life has gone?
They're wrong.
Can you tell them they're wrong?
Of course, people can be wrong about all sorts of things. If somebody has come to a position where they believe their life no longer has value, they're wrong about that.
So I really liked the fact that when the presenter said, well, some people perhaps don't think their life does have any value, and he simply tells her, well, they are wrong. In the same way that if you held up an egg and said, this is an egg, and somebody else said, well, I don't believe it is an egg, you could say, well, that's well and good that you don't believe it, but it still is an egg. The truth is it's an egg, whether you believe it or not. And he's saying people might not realize how much value their lives have, but they have value, whether they realize it or not. The only part of what he said that I disagree with was at the beginning, when he said, even if you take out the religious aspect, the aspect of God, people's lives still have intrinsic moral value. I don't think you really can take out God to make this claim. God is sort of the fundament, the foundation of this claim. The reason our lives are so important is exactly because God made us in his image. I understand why people may want to try and go down that road if they are arguing against assisted suicide and they realize the person they are arguing with or debating with doesn't believe in God, and they still feel they need to somehow convince them that human life is important. I get that, but I do think that the fundamental reason it's important is still because God made us. So it can therefore be difficult when having a discussion with someone who doesn't believe in God to convince them of that. particularly if somebody is really suffering and really struggling in life and just can't take it anymore and they want their life to be ended. It is difficult then to convince them of that spiritual aspect, of that intrinsic value that their life has. So maybe I can understand Milo saying even without this belief, it's still important not to kill people, even if they want to be killed. Folks, what do you think about that little segment from the Sunday show? Do you have any thoughts on Milo Yiannopoulos himself? Obviously, he's a controversial character. Obviously, sometimes he has purposely provoked in the way that he said things. More so to get a reaction, I think, than anything else. I think he just said things in a certain way because he knew it would either make people laugh or make people react. And he didn't want to be boring when he said it. And you'll see that if you watch some of the interviews that he's done in the past. Thank you very much for watching the video. Do leave a comment below if you have an opinion on this topic. And have yourselves a blessed day.